I goes down when light bulbs go up. So the more light bulbs you have, the less current you're going to have. Okay, good. So we got that. Lucy, what did you find about for parallel circuits? As you added light bulbs, what happened to the current in that table?
The current went up.
Yes. So in parallel, I goes up when light bulbs go up. Okay, so they behave differently. So the first comparison and the thing you can talk about is that series and parallel behave differently. They don't act the same way. As you add things in series and you add things in parallel, you get different answers. You get different responses. Okay? So you don't get the exact same thing as each other. So what is going to happen in order to make us figure this out? So what's going on here? What changes? All right. What connections can we draw? So the first connection that we can draw is this. We know that current goes down. What makes current go down? Resistance. We did that in the last lab, Lab B. So if the current goes down, that means the resistance must go up. So resistance and current in parallel circuits. So R must decrease for I to increase. There has to be less resistance in parallel. There has to be. There's no other explanation for why this happens other than the resistance is smaller. Okay? What about for series? For series, R must go up for I to go down. All right, let's see if we can get like a real world example of this. Okay, series circuits are like Rockville Road. Rockville Road goes in one line only. And resistors are like stoplights. So if you go on Rockville and you add more and more stoplights, what happens to the traffic? It gets worse. Okay? The more stoplights you have to go through, the worse the traffic is going to be. That is a series circuit. So as we increase the resistance, the current goes down. Okay? Adding streets is like parallel. So if you're talking about not just Rockville, you're talking about Rockville and 100 North and 100 South. Now you're talking about 3 different roads. Now, how is the traffic on all 3 compared to if all the traffic was only on Rockville? It's better. Still not great these days, but it's better. So the resistance has to go down for parallel because the current there's more options. So it makes sense that you have less resistance with more circuits or more loops because you have more options. You have more places you can go. Okay? The more ways you can get to a place, the better traffic is going to be. The more things you have in parallel, the faster the current will go. All right. Current of a parallel circuit and that of a series circuit. We kind of talked about this here just now. So series must have less current and parallel must have more. And parallel more. Put the phone. Good. is equivalent resistance? So equivalent resistance is total resistance of a circuit. And I'm going to call it REQ. But I've had people ask me, can you call it RT? That's also fine. Totally fine. If you want to call it R total, also fine. So, how do we find this? Okay, there's two ways. There's a way for series, and there's a way for parallel. All right, series. Resistance must go up so that current goes down. All right, how do I add numbers to make them bigger? Any ideas? If I want to add things together, how do I add them to get a bigger number? This is so easy, it's hard. Huh? Even easier than that. You just literally add them. Ready? Here we go. REQ equals R1 plus R2 plus yada, yada, yada. That's it. That's it. You just add them. You just add things. That's it. You're welcome. So if you have a series circuit, all you have to do is add the numbers. So we'll do an example next time. I'm going to give you 4 things in series. Say find the resistance. You just add them. If their resistances are 1, 2, 3, and 4, it's 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 3 is 6, plus 4 is 10. That's it. Woo! See, I said the best for last. Yeah, I said the best for second to last. Parallel, we have to add them so they get smaller. Well, how do you do that? How do you add things so you get less? I know how to add things to get more. You add. How do you get less? If you multiply, you get more. Dividing is different than adding. You can't subtract because they're not negative. Here's how you add them. Luckily, you've already seen this before. Last unit. You add them as 1 over everything. You add them as 1 over everything. That's all you have to do. You add them as 1 over. Now, we're going to do some practice with these on Monday. So the plan for Monday is we're going to do notes 3, which I think I gave y'all. We're not going to do today. And we're going to do 2 practices. We'll do 1 practice that will finish in class, and then 1 practice that hopefully will also finish in class. I think we will be able to. That'll be our last practice for the semester, and our last notes for the semester, and then we'll have 1 more lab, and then we'll review for the final, and then we'll be done. So we're getting to the nitty-gritty. All right. You can go ahead and put your stuff together. You can go ahead and stay where you are, though. We'll do a story time. Let's see. Have I told you the nipple piercing story?
Yes.
I did tell you the nipple piercing story?
No.
Did I tell you the struck by lightning story?
Yes.
I did tell you struck by lightning. How come you guys all my good electricity stories?
What about you getting
Oh, the Ron Artest one? I told the Ron Artest story?
You mean when you played with him and then you lost?
No. This is when I thought he was going to murder me. Okay, that's a good one. All right, so I was working on this project for speech class with a guy named Isaiah. And Isaiah and I would meet at the library and we worked on this project together. And one day he said he needed to be at home for something if I could meet him at his house. And I just got my license, so I'm like, oh, of course I can drive to your house. So anyway, so I drove over to his house, and Isaiah didn't live in a house. He lives in a castle. Now, I'm not making that up. His house was actually, like, had paramounts, and, like, it was a castle. Like, it had, like, a drawbridge kind of looking thing. Like, it was a castle. And I'm like, okay, so Isaiah's folks are loaded. Sweet. Okay, cool. So we got into his house, and his house is enormous on the inside. It's a lot more modern on the inside than it looks on the outside. And we decided that we would do what all normal high school sophomores would do, which is we decided to throw a football in the house to see how far we could throw it. So what we were doing is we were standing in different parts of the house and we were seeing how far we could throw the football to each other. Now, I am incredibly accurate up to about 20 yards. Anything other than 20 yards, and I am miserable. So we got to about the 20-yard point, and he was in the kitchen, and I was in the main room. No, it was the other way around. I was in the kitchen, yeah, because it kind of had like this wall that came down a little bit. It was like a cabinet shelf. You had to like throw it underneath. So I'm like throwing sidearm through the kitchen. Anyway, it turned out exactly like you would think. I threw an incredibly bad pass, and I knocked off this like Hello Kitty statue thing, and it shattered on the ground. And I'm like, oh man, tell your sister I'm really sorry. He's like, it's not my sister's, it's my brother's. I'm like, okay, weird, totally fine. Okay, your brother into that? That's fine. I was like, tell him sorry. He's like, no, you don't understand. They only made like 20 of these. And I'm like, what? He's like, this thing's worth like $2,000. And I'm like, this little Hello Kitty. Anyway, I'm like, all right, well, I'm good with people. I'll just talk my way out of it. It'll be fine. At that moment, his brother comes home. We hear the garage door go up, and he's like, oh crap, my brother's home. I'm like, it's fine. I said, don't worry about it. He's like, you don't understand. And as he says you don't understand, the door opens, and Isaiah's brother walks in. Now, I didn't realize this to the point yet, but Isaiah's last name was Artest. Isaiah's brother was Ron Artest, who used to play for the Indiana Pacers. He's currently now, his name is Meta World Peace. He doesn't play anymore, he's retired. But he played for the Pacers. The thing you have to remember is this was 1 month after the Malice at the Palace, when Ron Artest went into the stands and started beating the crap out of fans. So I'm staring into the guy who is possibly the scariest NBA player alive at the moment, and I just broke his really expensive, really rare statue. And so he walks in and like immediately sees it. Like he says like one thing to Isaiah and then sees it. And I go from being so confident I can talk myself out of this to being pretty sure I'm going to get murdered. And no one's going to care. My parents, they're not going to care. They're going to find out who it was. They're going to be like, he deserves it. My parents, they won't care. Isaiah, he's going to cover his own butt because I would. Ron is probably already buried 3 fans from Detroit. No one knows. Anyway, like, I'm just sure I'm going to end up dead. And so he is about ready to, I'm assuming, murder me because he's got this look in his eyes. And Isaiah says that he broke the statue. And we both are like flabbergasted. Like, I look like, what on earth are you doing? You're going to get murdered. Now I'm going to have to help bury a body. I don't even know Ron Artest. Like, I'm going to have to help him bury his brother. And so he's like, oh man, and like, it's fine. And I'm like, I went from being sure I was going to die to being sure I was going to help bury someone else to being fine and it just being over and it not being a big deal anymore. And I was like, if you don't understand what the word grace means, this is what it means. It's that. So I go from all that emotions, and then Ron Artest is like, hey, I don't remember anything else hardly. I remember we played pool downstairs in his basement. I remember Ron Artest gave me a glass of milk, and it was like the greatest thing I'd ever had in my life. That's like it. I don't remember anything else. I was in such a fog of this thing happening that I just couldn't believe what had happened. I was still alive, and that Isaiah was still alive, and we're all still alive. I couldn't believe it. And so I ended up seeing him from Ron from time to time, and he'd always be like, "Hey, what's up, Micah?" And I'm like, "Hey." And everyone's like, "Oh, you know Ron Artest?" And I'm like, "Yeah, totally. We're BFFs. We hang out all the time." And yeah, so I'd see him at the high school, and he'd pick up his brother every now and then. Yeah, the other story was when I played against NBA guys, and they absolutely kicked my butt. Yeah, shocker. NBA players are really good. See y'all. Have a great weekend.